So we're here in San Francisco for the Graph Gathering, and this edition, the main topic is agents and AI, in production in the enterprise, right? And I've had the opportunity to lead one of the breakout sessions on the topic of ontologies. I mean, one of the things that's becoming, kind of a hot topic is this idea of semantics, of formalizing knowledge and using ontologies to do that. So the conversation was great. I mean, we started with an alignment on what we mean by ontology, because as it happens, it's quite an overloaded term. And we saw how people see it from the more traditional formal representation to a more fuzzy one where it can be materialized in the form of skills, for example. But the idea is you're making knowledge explicit and people realize that there's value in there. Then the other dimension that we looked at is how do you use that explicit knowledge? And we talk from knowledge graph construction to retrieval improvements. And people had the opportunity to share their experiences and how ontologies work in combination with LLMs. So that was great. And another topic that I wanted to bring up is I've been working for the last few months with Stephen Chin and Michael Hunger, authoring a book on Graph RAG, the definitive Graph RAG, guide on Graph RAG, right? And yes, of course, we touch on the topic of knowledge graphs and how at the core of knowledge graphs there are ontologies, but we touch on many other topics like which are the main retrieval strategies, at the core of RAG, which are the techniques to build knowledge graphs, and we take the readers through all sorts of examples to make it practical, like in all the O'Reilly books. You want to make it practitioner focused. So that's what I had today. So this topic of ontologies is actually one that I wrote a chapter on in the book that we're about to publish, the definitive Graph RAG guide with O'Reilly. And in that book there's this chapter on knowledge graphs and how ontologies are central to knowledge graphs. But there's lots of other topics covered. Of course, it's Graph RAG is the main topic, so we talk about knowledge graph construction, we talk about the multiple retrieval strategies, we talk about evals, we talk about end-to-end examples, and we take always a very practitioner focused approach. So that's a topic that's central, and shows how graphs are kind of I would say central to AI applications these days, and partnering ground LLMs in a very efficient way, and that's been the subject of this event today, and that's why I believe it's important to be part of this kind of graph community and take part in these sort of events where we discuss these topics and share and exchange experiences of using them in real scenarios. And one thing that I got is kind of this kind of broader understanding of what ontologies mean, and from that point of view, in the book we take a very specific angle, which is the one that applies to graphs, specifically on how ontologies act as a way of formally defining the part of the domain that you care about, and that's useful to drive knowledge graph construction. And in the same way, it can be a description of what information is in the graph, so that it can improve the quality of the structured queries generated out of natural language. But I see that people's understanding is often broader than that, right? So they can look at they may refer to any form of knowledge representation as an ontology, and that's an interesting learning in a way, because that explain some of the often not very productive discussions on what is and what is not an ontology. As long as you can articulate it in the way that there's one common theme, which is you're making some knowledge explicit that otherwise was hidden in application logic, or that was hidden in the behavior of certain your LLM. So the details of how that materialize in some artifact that you manage and that you use is the important thing. So rather than being more prescriptive about it has to take this shape, it has to be following this particular formalism. So I think this broader idea of what ontologies can look like was an interesting outcome of the conversation.